Hi all, let's continue looking at Hikaru Nakamura's domination of the Rapid Open at the London Classic earlier this year. So on the 7th of December, Hikaru Nakamura in round 7 was paired against Britain's #1 Grandmaster, a Super Grandmaster as well, Michael Adams. On Wiki it indicates he was a British Grandmaster in 1989, that's when he became a GM. His highest ranking was world number 4. Achieved several times from October 2000 to 2002. His peak ELO 2761. He has achieved good results in World Chess Championship tournaments, several times a World Championship candidate. He reached the semifinals in 1997, 1999 and 2000. At the 2004 FIDE Championship he reached the final, narrowly losing out to Rustam Kasimdzhanov in the tie-break games. So anyway, Nakamura was playing white, played knight f3, keeping things flexible. Michael Adams responded with a very sensible looking system, d5 and now c6, so trying to blunt the fianchettoed bishop, but taking time to get the bishop, this bishop, outside of the pawn chain. With pawns here and that hemmed in, that can be a real problem later, especially if white gets a grip on the dark squares, etc. So that bishop would never really be liberated. So it's good to liberate it while it's got a chance. After castles, this is a known, very popular position. Over 3,000 games, knight f6, it's a popular position. d3. Often actually knight bd7 is played here, but e6 is the second most popular. Now we see h3. Often c4 is played, that's another logical move. But h3, the bishop drops back, knight bd2. Knight bd7 now is, very popular in this position. It will be transposing back 160 games even from that position. Bishop e7. Now usually white plays here e4. This is a popular choice in this position to play e4. There's 38 games here. Nakamura lashed out with g4, only 4 games. Very aggressive. Does it weaken white's king side a bit prematurely? Now, the continuation, knight h4. This is tactically justified. Although it's a loose piece for a moment. On knight takes g4, this wasn't played, knight takes g6, black has nothing. So that safeguards the knight for the moment, the knight takes g6. So a5 was played, e3, now knight a6. So black is not yet castling, interesting, a3. Knight d7 was played, now looking at that knight, and now we see after knight takes g6 it would seem quite natural to play h takes g6, but maybe Adams reckoned in this particular position something special going on. Perhaps he actually decided to play f takes, maybe the f file pressure he thought would be good later. On h takes, that's the engine suggestion, slightly better than f takes. It looks as though it's more structurally intact, the pawns, but I mean, as an example, this position, it doesn't look as though there's too much to worry about for either side. It looks fairly like a level sort of position if you look at the structural integrity. But the way Adams plays it here, it's interesting. He plays f takes g, and now we see the move d4. So white is trying to put pressure on this seemingly very, very solid triangle. After castles c4. Then we see knight c7. b3. White is trying to increase the grip on key dark squares like e5 by fianchettoing the bishop here. Bishop f6, as though black might be interested in e5 later. Bishop e2. Any e5 of course weakens d5 a little bit. King h8, queen c2 now. And the positional kind of threat here you can consider is f4, trying to keep a bind on e5, black playing e5, and it looks as though, you know, white would have a nice grip on the position. Although that's not to say here that e5 is particularly hot in this particular position. It's not mentioned from an engine perspective. Actually, things like rook c8, bishop e7. If e5, yeah, there's a snag here. Actually, there's a tactical snag. I wonder if you can guess it. This is a side variation, but what could white play here? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, g5, it's a bit of a snag, a forcing move, which actually gets another centre pawn, really. Trades a flank pawn for a centre pawn. And this would be very impressive, this diagonal, where things, yeah, it looks unpleasant for black to concede that centre pawn. So maybe, you know, that helps explain here why rook c8 was played. There's other ideas as well, though, that might be palatable. G5 from black here is maybe an idea to follow up with e5. In this case, I mean, this is actually one of the top 3 engine moves, g5. If rook ac1, you know, e5 might actually be more palatable here without that tactical trick. Don't know. This position looks a little bit scary because it's inviting like queen c7, but I'm not entirely sure this is so bad for black. It looks a little bit on the passive side. If we look at this continuation, say white was greedy here. I'm not sure this will help actually maybe justify there's weaknesses in white's camp. So that sort of thing is interesting to consider, g5. But okay, rook c8. What's the big problem with rook c8? Well, white now plays b4, which is slightly annoying. It's difficult for black to react with a takes here without activating this rook on the 7th rank. So takes, which wasn't played, like this, say e5. This sort of thing seems to favour white, these kind of variations, with a rook coming to the 7th. So actually it was like treated as a positional sacrifice, that a5 pawn with e5. And on the surface it looks like you know, black is playing very dynamically, aggressively, and so what if white wants to take on a5? It's just double pawns, surely. But is it the b file as well? Is there a backward pawn created on b7, which is a liability? Let's see now. After this e5, white took on e5. Black took with the bishop. If he takes with the knight, there might be this tactical trick. Yes, you can guess it. g5. Yeah, winning a piece. So bishop takes, and the snag here is, well, slight downside here is this testing this positional sacrifice. Is it really that sound? It looks as though, you know, white's just damaging his own structure, but the thing is, yes, this b file b7 is a potential problem. We see knight a6 here. And this does mean there's a potential tactic which comes up. Just before we get into that, I mean, the engine suggestion here, knight a6 is one of the moves mentioned, but also bishop d6 here. I mean, this is slightly pleasant for white, just for the b file pressure. This position is slightly on the pleasant side for white. So anyway, so knight a6. We see now a tactical sequence. Bishop takes, c takes to get rid of the c pawn, and now this key move. Can you see it here? Double attack clue. Well, the queen's got to get out of the way. It looks neat, you know, queen b2, just attacking b7 and e5. And yeah, black's previously solid pawn triangle has been blasted to bits now, and there's this lurking bishop on this diagonal. We see knight d3 here, which might not be helping black's cause theoretically. Apparently queen e7 might be a sterner resistance, but even so, it looks fairly uncomfortable, this kind of position, because of that b file pressure. So this is where structure versus the rooks is a balancing act. Although white seems to have compromised the structure, that pressure on the b file with the rooks, it seems very pleasant there. So if we go back, knight d3, and it looks at f2, of course. Queen takes b7, knight ac5. Yeah, offering d5 because it's another double attack. I mean, yes, it's a pretty dangerous position. So yeah, knight ac5, queen takes d5. Okay, well, black regains one pawn. Is there sufficient play here for black? 3 pawns versus 5 pawns, 2 pawns down, but now forcing move knight b3. If knight takes b3, which does protect the queen, probably, apparently best is, there's a much stronger recapture. What do you think is the stronger recapture here if you were white? From an engine point of view, there's a very clearly stronger recapture available out of the two. Sorry, it's become apparent why that's the case. You have to take here because the knight's actually hitting the rook. Yeah, that's much stronger than losing the rook. Pardon me. So I thought it was some other subtle reason. No. Anyway, congratulations if you found queen takes b3. Yes. So white's got this outside pass pawn and this laser beam bishop on the diagonal to support it. So a tricky position. So yeah, after knight b3, in fact, queen c3 was played, trying to keep pressure on white, potentially controlling c1 at least. That knight on d3 looks quite aggressive. Knight takes c5, rook takes c5, keeping that knight there. In fact, this is a difficult position for black now, very difficult after queen d6, because white now unveils, a very long-term clear plan, just a4, as though the pawn's going to queen, assisted by the bishop. And this rook's ideally placed actually in its starting square, just protecting f2. Something to point out, by the way, tactically on f2, there was one little trick. If we just rewind here, if white had played the routine kind of blockade looking move, knight d4, then black would have knight takes f2. There's pressure on a1 here, and so this is unnecessarily tricky. So rook takes this, queen takes a1. So that's not needed to get into this complexity of allowing anything like that. Here, it gets messy. In fact, black gets too much pressure after rook f8. So white has to be careful. So this knight takes c5 is actually quite a precise move. So rook takes queen d6, another precise move from Nakamura. Rook cc8. So a4, queen c2, as though there's coordination on f2, but unfortunately it's not really the case. White plays an amazing move. It seems that this is dual purpose actually. It wasn't just attacking the rook, but there's another essential tactical reason unveiled here, which is very useful. So what does white play here? If I give you 5 seconds. Okay, white plays bishop e4. It's a very nasty pin. The queen actually holds the h2 square, and this is very important because now after rook takes f2, white just plays bishop takes d3. This doesn't matter about the check here, because look at this, the h2 square. It's nothing for black there. It's horrible. It's just material down for nothing. So yeah, black. Black resigned after bishop takes d3. If we look at this position, I mean, it's tricky here. What does black actually do if he does this? Queen a3 is another idea now, just to get the pressure off. Here a5. I mean, if the rook came off f2, this pawn is just there's rook a2. There's resources here to protect f2 like that. And then probably just carrying on with a6. This pawn and this bishop is not a nice combination to face. It's a massive advantage here for white from an engine perspective. This position is just massive. There's always like tricky resources here, and even if white goes the exchange down, if we have this scenario, this is just a technical variation. Again, white is like +5 here, believe it or not. So this is the kind of thing maybe like the opening is designed for, to get this bishop and this pawn. So in retrospect, if we look at that positional outcome and look earlier at this seemingly sort of ugly b takes a5, actually it seems great. It's blasting away through the triangle to get this lethal a pawn with the bishop on g2. It just made to look so easy, but it's all the variations and stuff, all the resolution of variations looked at and everything. This is what Super Grandmaster chess at Rapid can look like. It looks as though on the surface it was a one-sided game. Only 31 moves, defeating Britain's top Grandmaster Nakamura. So yeah, a fantastic game, made to look quite easy, and from a kind of not so mainline opening, just this knight f3 business is quite incredible. Nakamura is a very, very talented player. I think one of the signs of that is being able to play huge number of openings, and his real strengths are in in the middle game and the end game. I don't think he's necessarily the greatest opening theoretician, but his real strengths as a player come out. It shows he can play anything, and especially dangerous at blitz and rapid, when players improvising, that loses time on the clock, etc. And Black seems to play a very, very sensible system. But yeah, okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.